Good morning. I see Sarah on here already. We thought we'd jump in a little early just to kind of make sure that we're ready to go right at 10. Lots of fun stuff today. And I sound raspy. I'm so sorry. The allergy season is officially in full force with me and it's not awesome. Troy, I hope that you're being a little sarcastic with it. Sounds like fun. Most people think budgets and forecasting are awful, but I do love it, so I can't help it. I'll wait till till 10 because I don't want to miss out on anything. But there will be, you guys, there will be attachments today. You'll email, Morgan has those, and I'll make sure her email's at the end of the slides. But I want to make sure that you guys have all that information. It's kind of a template that we use. At the end of when we're done today, if you'll fill out the survey, it'll be posted in the comment section, but that allows us to have to continue to get the funding to do stuff like this. So it's fun stuff. And you all probably, you've probably heard me by now say that I think small business is the foundation of so many communities, especially ours. So I think it's really important. Oh, see, Morgan just put the handouts there. So if you'll email her at mperry@mymcpl.org, and she'll send those over. I have a forecast budget template as well as a budget template to share out with everybody. Obviously, it's in Excel and you tweak it what makes sense to you. And we'll go through that. But I wanted to make sure I shared out one that was already formatted so you guys can kind of see that cash and watch all that. It does make a difference. Troy, you're so right. It is an important part of business. You'd be shocked the number of businesses I see that are like, oh, no, we've never made a budget. And I'm always like, how do you know how you're doing? Well, I think we can probably get started because I think our clock's about to roll to the 10 a.m. There it goes. So again, good morning, you guys. I'm Stephanie. I have self-proclaimed that it is Stephanie Saturdays because I just have so much fun with this group. And, it really means a lot to me to get to help small business. I just think we're so underserved. We do so much for the communities and the economy, but that is a space that is certainly underserved. So I just try to do everything that I can to help. So today we're gonna go through all those steps that I've given you guys 2 weeks ago on the grants and the things that we want to go through. And then last week, we did those 25 tips and tricks. We're going to kind of go into segments of it because it is really important, not just for any fun, grant funding or whatever, but just for, operational purposes of small business. And you'll hear me say it, and I think I said it last week that, it's one of my Stephanieisms that businesses die from within. And that's if we're so bogged down with the admin piece of stuff, that's usually the last piece that gets done, right? Because we're out there so busy making money and doing our thing. So then, the last thing you do after you've worked 16-hour days with your team or whatever, the last thing you want to do is come home and do admin stuff. So if we can set that foundation early and get that formatted, then we have that to be able to move at the speed of business, and we have that to be able to make sure that we are that to see how we're trending and see how things are shaking out for us. So it's really an important foundation. So let's get started. Maybe there it goes. Okay, so I just high level, for the purpose of budgets, we just want to be able to predict our income for the year. Or, maybe we're going to do a 6-month budget and see, right now is a hard time to budget because what the heck's happening? Nobody knows. So we want to predict our income, predict our expenses, and then really use that as a tool for our decision making. If we're reasonable with our budgeting and we make sure that, it's an art. When we start with that, it'll evolve and morph, and you'll get better at it as you do it. But it does help us determine and measure our performance as well. One of the things with that, a great example, if you're a contractor and, you bid a job for $10,000 to put up, I don't know, I have a lean-to out back. So maybe you bid me 10 grand to do my lean-to. You want to track those. You want to be able to say that this was successful. Here's what we made off this, or did we lose money? And so that's our purpose of the budget, obviously. Then the forecasting is kind of a little bit grayer in that we roll our budget forward into our forecast for our accounts and where we expect to be. And the forecasting is, if this budget, if we meet our budget, here's where we can expect our cash to be. And then if we say we want a 15% increase year over year, then we can drop that in there. And so it's kind of a what if scenario. And it tells us, here's if we increase 15% year over year, here's where we're going to be in 2 years. Here's where we're going to be in 3 years or 4 years. And so it kind of helps us. It does help scaling for sure, but it helps us kind of track that what if trend. And then what I've built into these two is the cash piece. It's really easy to put together a budget. There are some pieces that are non-cash items that are going to hit your net income. There are pieces that are not going to hit that net income, like loan payments. So we want to make sure that we can see that true cash piece. So it's because you can make the most beautiful budget in the world, but if it works out to where you're missing some items, or if like your loan payments, for example, if they're not coming over, you can't see that cash going down. So we want to make sure that we incorporate all of that. All right. So the first template that you guys will get this is the budget template, and I just kind of screenshotted it for you. And one thing I've done with the template, and so let me back up. Sometimes it's hard to plan or to think through all those little bits and pieces that we need to make sure we have. Sometimes it's really tough to remember, we want to factor in things that we would otherwise forget, like credit card processing fees. You take, whether you Stripe or PayPal or whatever, they charge you, right, for your customers to pay you by credit card. There's always a credit card processing fee. So sometimes, though, people don't think that through. So we want to make sure that gets put in there. That's why I purposely put it on this window, because that's one of the big things I see get overlooked. Another thing I see get overlooked is utilities, because if you don't have a storefront, or if you don't have a separate office, how are those utilities being tracked? And, maybe you have a home office and you're factoring in, a certain percentage of overhead. to go back to that, we want to make sure that we're tracking that and you know, so like maybe my utilities are $500 a month and I office at home. So, as part of my budget, maybe I put back, I know that 10% of that or 30% of that is my stuff, then I want to make sure I put it back into like my family fund. Then we want to make sure we include any lease payments or rent expenses. Again, goes back to if you don't, if you office from home, you may not have a rent expense, but lease payments can be any vehicles or anything like that. Equipment leases, we see that a lot too. So we want to make sure that we do that. With this one, I gave you guys a very scaled down, like a high level one. Add. It's Excel. Insert a line, add whatever. When you insert a line, it should continue the formula. If it doesn't, just drag it down from the one above it. But I mean, make this fit you. You don't have to conform to what I gave you, but it's a roadmap to kind of start you. Make it fit you and your needs. I like to see my utilities split out. Granted, I'm an accountant, so of course I'd like to see it split out. But, maybe you want it all together, or maybe you do want it split out, that we want to know what we're paying for gas, electricity, whatever. My landscaping companies, maybe they need to make sure they have fuel expense listed, because obviously that's a big expense, Troy, I hear you. I'm in Peculiar. Troy just said the problem with utilities and independence is they're all over the place. I'm in Peculiar and I never know. And we have Osage Valley, and one day we can have our power bill can come and it's $200 and I'm ecstatic. Our power bill can come the next month without air conditioning and it's $450. You just never know. And don't get me started on my water company. It is hard. And it doesn't have to be perfect too. That's the one thing, it's kind of, a budget is more like a strong suggestion, if you will. I plan for worst case scenario. If I know that my highest water bill or my highest power bill, we'll say in the summertime, because we're all electric, if I know it's $800, then I would start in my budget, I would probably put from May to probably September, October, I would make sure that it's higher in that period. I would rather be over budgeted for expense than be way under. If I over budget for expense, then I say, hey, this is what I have to make to come out ahead, right? A lot of folks start with their cash or their sales and their income. And that makes perfect sense. I do it backwards because if I go out, if I say, I know these are my hard costs, I know this is what my bank fees are going to be, I back into it because I want to know to cover all of this and to make that margin that I want to make, what do I have to make? I want to go into that. Shannon, you're so right. Of course I said it backwards, right? Shannon said, you guys, that her personal budget is always a constant work in progress. And it's true. I mean, it's not, once we do this, it doesn't mean that it doesn't change. Your nonprofits change theirs. They evaluate theirs at least every mid-year because it does change. Look at us now. How many people maybe budgeted in January and now, holy crap, their whole world is turned upside down. They need to go back to the drawing board, I just spoke with one of the Better Business Bureaus last week, and they said the same thing that, oh, our budget now is no good. And that, we were talking about it just like, hey, yeah, you probably need to revisit that because everything's changed, in a matter of 6 weeks, worlds have been turned upside down. So it's not, once you do it, doesn't mean you have to stick it. It can shift. I encourage you, while you're getting used to it and you're working through your first one, I encourage you to revisit it at least once a quarter because stuff does change. Maybe you didn't think about something. And this is all what I'm saying with this particular one too, this is as if you're very new to business too. if you already have had a business and you have financials from prior year, start there. Look at that prior year information and kind of, look at, okay, where are we bleeding? What can we cut? And then if all things stay the same, where do we want to be? If you're using QuickBooks, we can start you. I can show you how to go through that. And there's actually a video for QuickBooks Online for how to enter the budget and how to create it based off the prior information on my YouTube channel. Just because I did it for somebody the other day and I was like, oh, you know what? People probably need that. So our format's super straightforward. We just put in the estimated. This actual cash column. This is, again, if you're not using accounting software, this is really great to use and drop in that, if you're looking at it quarterly or whatever, put that actual cash in there. I roll it out month over month. I do not like to look at it as a whole. I like to look at it month over month because, like the power bill, for example, some months are going to be, if you're seasonal, in my business, it's crazy from December to the end of February. It's just a madhouse. So, there's seasonality in a lot of business. So we want to make sure that you take it in little segments. It is also not, it's easier to digest when you take it in those little segments. It's not quite as overwhelming. All right. So on our, let's talk about, just things to consider as we budget. I always say try to brainstorm items that you may have missed. That's why I said go back to it. If you don't use an accounting software, I have so many folks that, I coach through and they're using Google Docs or, an Excel sheet. Totally fine. But do go back through those receipts. Let's look at, hey, what did I miss? What could I do differently? Shannon just posted that same thing. She always encourages her clients to revisit their budgets periodically. Shannon does a lot of personal budgeting with people, and she provides support for people to, who want to get out of debt and stuff. So, and she does it from a very, an individual level. And she's saying the same thing that, we're talking about. So it tells you that there's proof in the pudding. Let's make sure that we go through this, revisit it. Don't just do it. Leave it. Please don't. It will do you no good if you don't revisit it and if you don't compare it to where you're at. Don't make it just for the sake of making it. Make it for the sake of using it. Let it be that tool that helps drive your business forward. It's really important. So I always say, kind of brainstorm it. Think about, oh man, what about my cable bill? My internet's in that. Or like I said, the fuel or, car insurance, think about those things that maybe we pay once a year and don't think about again. Your domain name, that's one that we pay once a year, right? I don't know. I am horrible about that, so I do think that through and look at that historical piece. It's really, really important. I want you to consider things like if you have staff, your work comp. If you have, the utilities we talked about, your insurance on your vehicles, your general liability insurance. In my case, I have errors and omissions insurance. That's an added expense. I want to make sure I budget for that because I want to make sure that I can get somewhere with it. The loan payments piece. This is one that is such a pain point for so many people. That's why I put it on here because I really wanted to talk about it. Generally, when you're doing your taxes, when you're preparing your financial statements, going through your QuickBooks, your loan payments, it's reducing a debt, right? So that debt sits on the balance sheet. It's not telling us today, what's my net income, right? So what I want to make sure that we do with our budget, the only thing that hits our profit and loss or income statement, the only thing that's telling us our net income, the only piece of that hits it is the interest piece. If I have a $5,000 loan payment and $200 of that is interest, that's all that's going to hit that. So that's where it's a little flawed. if you use just your P&L from prior years. That's why I want to make sure we talk about that, because I want to make sure cash is king, right? The cash flow is what's driving our business. So we want to make sure that with our budget, and you'll see on the sheet, you'll see I have a line for loan payments. While it does not impact your net income quite like you expect, it impacts your cash. Cash is what we're budgeting. Cash is king. Another Stephanieism, you're going to hear it a lot. So I do want to make sure that we recognize that piece for our budget purposes. It's really, really important. You don't want to have, thank you, Shannon. You don't want to have a piece that, you're expecting a $2,000 month net, and you forgot a $5,000 loan payment because now you're in the whole $3,000. So it's really, really, really important that we talk, that you make sure we incorporate those loan payments, those pieces. The other thing I'll say is, and I know I'll bring it back up as we talked about the historical data. That is your best start. Is, what did you do last year? That's your best start. That's always where I start with people. Is I look, even if it's let's pull your tax return. If you don't have it in a system, fine. Let's pull your tax return and see what you did last year, and let's roll that forward. We can expand out our accounts, but let's look at that. That's really, really important because we have to start from somewhere. If you're new, great. Then we look at it as a whole and we say, here's what I expect will happen. Clean slate. We start here. Here's where we're going to go. The other thing about your budget is it helps you with that roadmap. If I say that I'm going to have a $5,000 month, that's my goal and my driver at the beginning of the month. If I get halfway through the month and I'm not there, what do I need to do? What do I need to change? It goes back to that tool for planning. Do we need to focus on sales? Do we need to focus on, oh my gosh, we have a big expense? What can we peel back? Where are we at with that? That's a good driver. And that roadmap, I'm a list maker. So that roadmap's really, really good to get you started. If you are using an accounting software, like I said, I'll walk you through the pre-population part. A lot of people are using QBO. Definitely, it's just Guardian Accounting Services on my YouTube channel. It's there. I'll forward it over to Morgan as well so that you guys can have access to that. It's not like a subscription or anything, but it's just a video I put together in the QBO sample company, but it takes a lot of work out of it. But again, because it's QuickBooks, it doesn't pull in that loan bit. So, we can export it to Excel. We can make sure we get that part in there, and I'm happy to walk you through any of that. Memorialize your budget. This sounds really lame. I mean, I know it sounds lame. Memorialize it. You'll be shocked, but if I keep it up, I always have my budget available. If you have an accounting software, let's put it in there. Because when you run your monthly reports, if it's in there, you can see, here's how we did. Here's how we said we were going to do. Where are we off? It's really, really important to have that. But then when you memorialize it too, just like if you have your mission statement on your wall, or if you have your goals posted, same thing, right? You see it. It's going to stay fresh in your head. It gives you that roadmap. It keeps you on target. And my last point with budget, I'll just reiterate it because we did talk about it. It's a living document. It is no different than you or I evolving and growing as humans. Same thing. The same thing. Maybe we do heating and cooling and we got a really great deal on filters, so then we, now we can adjust that in our cost of goods, but we got a deal. So, it's living, it's always moving, like I said, maybe in Independence, they get it together and your utilities go flat, like you're $200 a month. I mean, we would all love that. But maybe that's what happens, so then you can adjust it and tweak it. Maybe you sign on a new contract and all of a sudden your revenue is going to be 3 times what you expected. Adjust it, tweak it. You hire new people that you weren't planning to, but business is booming. Tweak that budget. It does not have to, it's not a one and done. It's not, I've touched it. Here's what I said I was going to be. I can't do anything else. It is definitely not that way. Um, does anybody have any questions? It's kind of a good pause moment to ask if anybody has any budget questions. Shannon, you're a genius. Shannon said she puts on her calendar to set a reminder, that, hey, it's end of the quarter. It's, end of the month. Let's look at our budget and see where we're at. If you're, when you go in to reconcile your bank statements and you go in and make sure all your stuff's there, that's a good time to look at it. Like she said, it outsource it if you need to. If you need help, call me, please call me. I'll help you. We'll work it out. But that budget really is crucial to scaling your business. So perfect example, like my business is going crazy and I'm hiring people. But if I didn't have a budget, I wouldn't be able to say, here's what I can afford to pay somebody. You need to be able to move at the speed of business too. You don't want to be the last one to the party and miss out on all the good people. You want to make sure that you're able to be fluid and move with business. That budget's going to help do that. I know we've talked about the grants and stuff too, but having that budget, it puts you at the top of the stack when they're looking at grant applications because, let's be honest, you look like you know what you're doing, right? You have it together. You have a plan. That's where, they don't want to give money to somebody who's just kind of rogue. They want to make sure that you have a plan. And Shannon's totally right about dealing with unexpected expenses. If you have that budget and something, you need a roof repair, your office roof blows off, whatever, it is Missouri, it can happen. Then when you have something huge like that, you can kind of see where it's at, where we're at, what do we need to do? I always throw, when I budget, if I say my utilities are going to be $800, I pad that. Like I said earlier, I go very conservative in that I go higher. It's, for me, I would rather come in under budget, but I plan for the worst, hope for the best, right? And that's what my mom taught me. So to make sure that you can it's always better to plan high for that, I might be a little bit of an aggressive soul though, but I do think you should plan high. Let me click it. So let's flip to forecasting. This is the spot, like I said, that a lot of people get kind of weirded out about, and it is a little different. I did go ahead and put some numbers in for the forecasting because this one, I want you to see how the formulas flow and kind of see the purpose of it. The first slide I have is just the top part of our forecast. So you'll see it's the same accounts because, obviously you want your budget accounts, those are what you're using. We want to roll that and see how that's going to affect us going forward. So if you make an adjustment in the budget template, go drop the same thing in your forecast. Thank you, Shannon. Have fun. Shannon's going to replay us, guys. She's actually from Atlanta, so we're reaching. So with our forecast, if you have actual information, then you can use your actual cash income. If you don't have that, if you are new, I put together a forecast a few years ago for a buddy of mine in the city, and he called me this year and said, hey, that was so great. We've gone through that forecast. So can we do it again? So we just rolled it forward. But, this is the year we had actual, we had actual numbers, so I was able to make it a little more accurate. But so with our estimated cash, I have here's, and again, totally round numbers, totally just spitballing so you guys can see this stuff. But I put our estimated income in, and I put our estimated cost of goods sold. Not everybody has cost of goods sold, but I put it in there so we can see, our gross profit. But then what I did is I gave you kind of actual, like pretend actual numbers. So you can see any difference between budget versus actual. But then in our forecast, we have the column, the increase column. So say, we want our sales to increase 25% year over year. So this is formulated to tell me so now I drove this off of actual. You can drive it off of budget, but because I put in actual numbers and, theoretically, I've been around, I'm driving it off of actual right here. Year over year, if we go up 25%, and next year we'd be at 25,000 because we had 20,000 of income. And then the next year, 25% of this one is going to be the 31,000. So I made sure that you can do each individual line, so it'll flip it. It'll add it. If you want to project a growth, a 10% growth rate, then you have that available. So same thing on your expenses, formulated the exact same way to roll forward. Do not be afraid in your forecast. Say that our accounting fees, we're going to have a drop. They're not going to go up. They're going to go down for whatever reason. Then you flip that to a negative. It'll calculate a negative percentage and that drop down. But what it's going to do then is it's going to let you see where you're trending to go out next year, the year after that. If we stay on this trail, where we expect, because this is our goal, right? Where do we expect we'll be? I'm going to go to the next slide, though, because this is the really, really good part of this forecast slide. Again, same accounts as our budget. We can drop in on our forecast. You can drop your estimated, it's your current year budget, totally fine. This next slide, though, this is what I really want to share with you when it comes to forecasting, because to me, it's really, really important. There we go. So we go all the way through, and you'll see we have our total cash out, right? That and in this one, we have our loan payments in there, but this is our total outgoing. So then we have our net. That net is all of our sales minus all of our cost of goods sold minus all of our cash payments, regardless of whether or not they would be on our P&L, like the loan payments we talked about, cash payments, credit card payments, whatever. That's going to show in this line. Then our cash balance line, this is my favorite part. If we have our beginning balance, so say we had $5, if our numbers hold true, year over year, month over month, whatever, however we want to forecast it, here, this 5,050 is what we would end at that first year of cash available for spend, right? Or investment or whatever. So this line here is going to be an ongoing balance. It's going to total that. So then at the end of year 2, we would be at the 84.55 left over. So what that does, that allows us to see our excess cash. And that excess cash is going to be, we can use it for investments. We can use it to buy fixed assets. Maybe we need more equipment. Maybe we need to hire people. We're going to see what's out there, what we have available. That cash piece is really, really helpful. You're going to find that the budget's amazing. Forecasting is amazing. But that cash piece is so, so important. That cash piece also, your tax preparer is going to love you for that, because it's telling them, if you're going back into this quarterly and you're, we have the cash line on the bottom of the budget, just so you know. But if you're going back in regularly, when you go to do, your CPA calls you, hey, what's your estimated income for the quarter so we can do tax payments, you have it handy. You can say, here's where I'm at. Here's my, here's what I made. Here's what my excess cash is. Or for cash flow purposes, can we kind of scale it back? You talk to your CPA and they're going to be able to help you through that part, but that's going to be really, really big for planning purposes. You pay for your supplies up front. That cash piece is really important. My fiance and I were just talking about that last night with another friend of ours that, hey, you need to have cash reserves. You need to have money sitting aside. So when you get a big contract, you're not waiting to get paid before you can start that contract. You get the supplies, it keeps snowballs the cash flow. It keeps it going. Sometimes you front on a job, you may have to front some of the cash up front, but because you know where your cash balance is trending, it helps you with that. Cash flow is so, so important with what all of us do. And some stuff to go over, like I said, let's copy and paste that budget information into the forecast. It's a good starting point. And then, I would say, old me would say, hey, do what's realistic for your growth percentages. I'm not very big on realistic because, I set some really high goals. So you set that growth percentage the way that you're comfortable and what you want to attain. If you see that, if it feels kind of high, good, because it's in front of you. And if it's in front of you and it feels high, you're going to work, you're going to keep going. It helps that drive. Kind of goes back to just kind of some of my psychology classes in college and stuff, but it does. Seeing it there in front of you, if you see it every day. Grant Cardone talks about it in his 10X rule. In his book, it's right there. You see it every day, you live it. So don't feel bad to make it high. Again, it's a what if this happens, here's how we're going to shake out. You can forecast that revenue separately from expenses. Maybe you want to increase your revenues 30%, but you want to decrease your expenses 5%. Totally. Those lines are individual in the template, so you can adjust that to where it flips back and forth. Perfect world, wouldn't we all love to have our expenses down and our revenues high? It's a bigger net income. I pay more in taxes when it's a bigger net income, but that's okay. Then, I want you, again, to consider the cash impact of that forecast. If you've got your forecast together and in 2 years, we'll go back to our landscaping. In 2 years, you want to buy another truck and trailer. Great. Build that into your forecast. Build that into, hey, I know that this is going to go. So I'm going to have increased expenses or cash out the door. So you want to make sure you build that into that. And I keep notes. I put like a note in the cell or something so that I know, when I go back to it, why was there an influx of expenses? But it helps you, again, with that roadmap. But it also, if you are doing the grant funding, maybe you're forecasting and you're showing, if they give you the funds, we get to buy this truck and trailer, and here's how our revenues will increase because we have more availability. They want to see that information. That forecast gives you the that planning tool, but it also, again, reiterates that you know what you're doing. You're the expert in what you do. And here's how we're going to take this to the next level. If you have your forecast and you are working for a grant, add that line in there for that funding. Add a line in the revenue that here's our grant funds, so they can see that money coming in and then that net impact at the end of the year. But then they can see, because we have this, our revenues go up 35%. Our expenses are down because we don't have to rent equipment, or, they'll see that play out. Your forecast tells a story. Because you forecast it does not mean it has to happen either. So if you're looking at a project, like you're applying for a grant for a project, you forecast that out how you expect it to shake out. Doesn't mean that because you forecasted it has to happen. It means that here, if we get this influx of cash, here's what we want to do with it. So it's a what if scenario, but it allows you to have that additional information available and allows you to look at where you're at today, what your current budget is, again, all things the same, and then, what happens. Or, for example, you could take it the other way. I mean, nobody wants to go down, but we all know business has changed drastically in the last 6 weeks. So maybe we take that forecast, we make a copy of it and say, like a pandemic forecast, for lack of a better title for it. But then because your sales are down 65%, maybe your expenses are down too, hopefully. But if you forecast that out, how's that going to look? If so, maybe we don't come out of this. I saw somebody was saying it may go till 2022. I disagree, but let's hope not. But that forecast allows you, all things the same, here's where we're going to shake out if things remain the way they are. So then that gives you the tool to, okay, this is where we're going to be. We'll make it 3 years at this rate. That'll prompt you then, having it in front of you, having it documented, then you can look at that and say, okay, how do we pivot? What other stream of income can we add? What do we need to shift? Where do we need to change? But you have it all in front of you. So it's just like a grocery list. I mean, realistically, it's all in front of you, and you can say, maybe we don't need this service, or, maybe we'll bring this in-house. We won't outsource and we'll bring this in-house. Maybe we'll train, somebody to do the invoicing and not have to hire it out. That allows you, though, to see it all in front of you, that this is where we're at today. This is what the economy is predicting. So how do we adjust and shift? And how do we come out of this ahead? How do we thrive during this time? I know it sounds really crazy, you guys. I totally know. Before I got into accounting, I would have said you have lost your mind. I've seen it work. I do it personally in my firm. I help clients do it across the country. It does work. It feels weird the first few times. I swear it does. You're like, this is so weird. It doesn't make any sense. Why am I doing this? The hour or two that you spend doing this, you're like, so we've got it formatted for you, tweak it, morph it the way you need it to be. But that hour, 2 hours you spend makes all the difference in the world. When I've had people, since this pandemic has started, I have talked to so many small businesses scrambling, right? How many people wanted the PPP loans, the SBA loans, just freaking out? I mean, that's how I got with you guys, right? Because Morgan said, oh gosh, you can speak to some of this. Let's help people. If you don't know what you don't know, so if you have this giant problem, it naturally causes fear, right? You're afraid. But if you take that, let's put it on paper. Let's remove that emotion and put everything on paper. We'll go through line by line, look at our forecast, look at, okay, so sales stink right now. How do we flip this? Where are we today at this rate? That allows you to, it sounds really crazy, you guys, but it allows you to take that emotional piece out of it and look at it realistically in front of you. Okay, so here's where we are. What can we do to continue to stay in business? But I don't want you just to stay in business. I want you to excel in business. So let's look at it. What can we do? That's what's going to elevate you above all of your competition right now, too, I promise you, is that you've put a plan in place. And, without a plan, we're just rogue. I'm a very structured human. I have, a set sleep time and all of that. But it makes a difference, and it makes it to where it's less intimidating and less scary too. I've had so many people that I've talked to that I'm like, okay, I hear what you're saying. Totally hear what you're saying. Let's get it out here on paper. Let's work through this. We spend hour, 2 hours, we go through it, get it on paper, and then we can pick out like, oh, this isn't going to work right now. Maybe people aren't spending on this right now. So let's remove that. But then what value can we add? That's the thing. If it's all in your head, you're likely to miss something. I can't go to the grocery store thinking, I want to make lasagna tonight and remember everything that A, I have in the freezer, refrigerator, or pantry at home, and B, remember what I need to buy. You've got to have that plan, that list. So this really helps solidify that. This really helps you. It takes a lot of the angst out. It really does, because when you have it out, when we can say, okay, fine, my sales are down, but if I do X, Y, and Z, my sales are going to come up, maybe in a different manner, maybe for a different product or service, but they're going to come up, if that makes sense. A great example you'll see I shared on my page. I'm getting married this year, and my wedding caterer, obviously, everything's changed. There's no weddings right now. There's no big events. And she shifted. She put it out, looked at it as a whole, she shifted. And now she's offering, delivery and curbside pickup for these amazing meals for families. Not, because what are we doing? We're spending all of our time with families. But having that out on paper makes the difference. Having that out, where she could see everything and look at it and say, okay, this is impacting me. What can I do? And how can I serve and come out of this ahead? That's what this is going to do. It's going to help you guys come out ahead. Again, I know it's not fun for most people. I like it, but we all know I'm a little twisted. I know it's not fun for most people, but it does help. It does make the difference for all of us. It's if you're a service-based company, if you are, a food truck, it just makes a difference, you guys. So, does anybody have any questions? I know I ramble, you guys. This is literally something I could talk about for days. So I think I say that every week. And again, sorry for the allergies. Well, I'm going to keep going. Definitely, if you have questions, pop them up here as we go through. But I do want to make sure I share with all of you, we do still have spots open. You can have one-on-one time with me. I've already had a couple of them, had some really great conversations. I'm here to be your advocate and to help you. Sometimes it's just a matter of asking questions a little differently. We get into our own heads. And so, we're so focused on our business that when we have an outsider asking some questions, it really prompts a lot of really creative thinking. And it's a really good thing. If you want to grab a one-on-one, email Morgan, m.mymcpl.org. Email her for those templates. She'll make sure you get them. Definitely that survey, as that survey helps them track what they're doing with the Square One Small Business Services and who they're serving and how they're reaching people. It's really important. We've talked about it before in some of our grant conversations, but that's how you measure success, right? For a grant. So we want to make sure that you continue to fill out those surveys. It's really important, you guys, right here. Click that link, fill out that survey. It's really, really important. Definitely thank you for the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation funding the library programs like this. Without them, we wouldn't be able to help everybody. And that's so important, especially now. It was important before, make no mistake, but we don't want to see a bunch of businesses fail if there's something we can all do to help. I want to say thank you to Square One Small Business Services again for all their continued support for small business. You'll hear me preach it, but it's such a pivotal piece of Kansas City. The more we do together here, you guys, the more that we talk and leverage things and work together to thrive in this time, the better off we'll be. As I know, I mentioned it originally, Morgan and I have had multiple conversations, but a lot of the funds available, the SBA funds and things like that in this time, they don't fit for most of us. And that's really tough. There's a few senators that are trying to get that expanded. I just sat in a town hall with Josh Hawley yesterday about that. They're really trying to expand that reach, but the SBA ran out of money. What was it? Yesterday was the 17th, and so 2 weeks. 2 weeks they ran out of $384 billion. That's a lot of money. And most of those loans went to people not like us. They went to that next step up. They still, from a tax perspective, are considered small business, but they don't. Most of the Kansas City businesses don't fall in that sector. So, like I said, the more we all work together, the better we'll be. I love this. So, was asked, what can I tell you to work together to prepare for the paperwork for applications? Great question. I literally just posted too that even though they're out of money, even if it's like AltCap, for the Kansas City group is out of money, there's still a lot of organizations, you guys, coming together and continuing to help and grow. And a lot of our big businesses are contributing in the foundation. So there's more coming. If you just, like I said, I sat in on that town hall. I'm in the Kansas City Chamber. I listen. There's a lot in the works. There's a lot more coming. So do have your stuff together and be prepared. That's a really great question. I know we've talked before about your permanent documents, your tax ID number. Those foundational pieces are really important. Your Secretary of State good standing certificate, things like that you want to make sure you have handy. This budget and forecast for where you are today, what you're planning for the year, what you're planning for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, that is huge. That substantiates any packet you have. I always, whenever I submit for grants, for loans, for anything, I give them so much information. One of my old bosses said, better to dazzle them. No. If you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with BS. And he used to say it in that, give them so much information that they don't have to come back to you with questions. A, it keeps things going smoother, but B, makes you look like you have it together. So have that budget, have that forecast, have that narrative, a plan of what are you going to do? Tell that story with that budget. That's really, really important to be able to share that information, but have it ready. As soon as that stuff opens up, be ready to be first in line. There is no shame in that. Be first in line. Lene, definitely call us. We'll get together. And absolutely, AltCap, like I said, there's more stuff coming. There's more organizations coming together. AltCap is doing some fundraising right now, so they can do another set of loans. I mean, they capped in no time. Why? Because there's so many people not served by that stimulus, by the CARES Act. And Kansas City, you'll hear me say it over and over, it's a very giving community. There will be more available. How do I know? I just know. There will be more available. So keep ready. But if you do know somebody, maybe you need some write-offs. Maybe you know somebody who needs some write-offs, or get out there, have them reach out to AltCap. They can donate through there. Every dollar does help because it helps businesses like us, right? I mean, it helps small businesses all over the city and in the area. That's really, really what's important, you guys. I don't know how many people are watching outside of Kansas City. I know Shannon was from Atlanta, but there's some really great communities out there that'll do great things for us. We just have to know to look, and we just have to continue to work together. I read in one of the accountants in one of my groups, he said, he was like, he got denied his SBA loan and, whatever. And it was this long post, but he said, I'm not going to let this beat me. He said he's going to come out stronger because now he's got some of the tools and resources. We've been communicating quite a bit too. I've just been trying to share stuff with him that, yes, we're in the same field, but we're in very different aspects of it. And so I've just been sharing with him like I do with you guys. And it's been huge because he's like, I'm going to come out way ahead. And you'll hear me say it over and over. Do you want to thrive or do you want to survive? Surviving's fine, but let's position you to get through this and come out way ahead. Let's continue to work together on this. I'm here on Saturdays as long as you guys will have me. So we'll come up with stuff for sure. But definitely, please, you guys, keep your paperwork together. That I don't want you to get caught by not having your Secretary of State certificate of good standing. Or, I just pulled one down for a client the other day. And, if you don't know where to go for that, oh, please, please, please ask. But if you just go into your Missouri and Kansas are the same, different websites, but the same process. Go into your business search and the Secretary of State website, go to business search, pull your entity up, click on that name. There's a hyperlink under your name. Click in there and you'll see the option to pull a certificate of good standing. I think it's like, they're good for 90 days generally. So, now would be a good time to pull it. And I want to say it was $15 that I paid the other day. It was super minimal to pull one down, but worth every penny. You don't have to pull a new one every time you apply for something, but you definitely need a current one. And like I said, I think they're good for like 90 days. But don't let something silly like that. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. Don't let something silly be why you didn't apply. If you have a question, ping us here, message us. If it's something that, that Morgan and the team can't answer, they'll holler at me and I'll answer it for you. But don't let one question be why you don't apply for something. There are no stupid questions. None. I firmly believe that. So don't feel like, oh, I don't want to ask it. Do not let you being in your own head be what keeps you from doing great things. Not worth it. It's a judgment-free zone here. Are there any other questions, you guys? I can't believe we're already at almost an hour. Holy cow. Time flies when I have fun. I will definitely, you guys, keep an eye out on the alt cap stuff and continue to keep a pulse on things and keep our group updated if I hear anything, come across anything new. It is really it's a big deal. I can tell you that one of the things here, I can kind of just give you, one of the things like that the senators are working on and stuff that they're trying to get through is just the fully fund that the SBA stuff. That was the big conversation yesterday. And then I do know, for those of you who have applied for unemployment, I'm going to totally rabbit trail on you, that the federal unemployment was released this week in the state of Missouri. And Kansas was supposed to be next week. I haven't looked to see if it came out yet. If you had continuation insurance, a lot of small businesses don't, but if you did and your insurance company's being kind of sticky for this time, they say that that's been really common. It's one of the things I heard him say yesterday, that don't be surprised if your continuation insurance fights you. There's already lawsuits in action, and it sounds like that's going to get maybe worse because they're like, oh, they weren't prepared, for their continuation insurance. They're prepared for like my business something to happen, but not for everybody's business for something to happen. So don't get frustrated with that, just go through the process. You guys, thank you again for having me. I just love it. Like I said, I can talk about this stuff forever, and it's definitely on my heart to do as much as I can. So if you guys have questions, if there's something you guys want to see, let us know. Definitely let us know, and we'll weather the storm, all of us together. You guys take care. Have a great Saturday.